Hi, I'm Aseron. I work for Zynga, Director of User Research. I want to tell you before I get going here that I actually have my notes on my phone, so I'm not actually checking to see whether I got email during the presentation. If you see me keep looking over here, you have my full attention. I wanted to start a little bit about talking about what Asi said about the beginning, being at the beginning, compared it to film, documentary film, compared it to graphic novel. And in this case, one of the things that I liked most about this project, Ken Weber, Zynga.org, brought me on and asked me to do a little work with Asi and the Half the Sky project. The thing I liked about it most was bringing what we know about game making and about research on games and bringing it into the environment of a nonprofit the Half the Sky movement in order to try and accelerate that development. That was one of the fun parts. And to talk a little bit about how we think about user research on games, I want to note usually where my team comes in is usually in these first two stages, and we do a lot of our work there. Here what I'm showing is just what the studio's goals might be at the different points in development and what kind of research that my team can do during those points in development. In this case, we didn't come in at this place. And our first research engagement came in between the alpha and the internal beta stage. And the reason that's important is because it changes the methods you use, and you're trying to have as much impact as you can right away. So what we did for the game were three things. We did 2 heuristic evaluations. Is that a term folks are familiar with? Do I need to talk about that a little bit?
Yes.
Okay. Heuristic evaluation, essentially, on my team I've got four folks on my team, and between us, over time, we've run many thousands of participants in research studies of one kind or another. And when you've done that, what you can do is you can look at a game and you can basically channel the people that you've seen in the past, and you can say, here's what I see if we were to bring people in, if we were to run large sample sizes of people through this game, here's what I expect we would see, here's the kind of feedback we would see. In other words, you can save a lot of time by simply having some folks who are experienced at this look it over, make careful notes, and combine their feedback in a way that allows you to understand what the issues are and what to attack in the game. So that's the first thing we did. We did a heuristic evaluation and looked at basically 3 sets of issues. The things that came out of that were a real focus needed on the on-ramp, or the first-time user experience. The reason that's important, particularly in this context, first-time user experience is always important, but in this context, first-time user experience is people are coming to this game, they're knowing that it's a not your standard game. And it's your job to capture them right away and to make sure that they keep going on into the game. That the goal of first-time user experience is not to explain everything about the game. It's not to have them do everything they need to do to, for example, trigger a donation or something like that. The way we think of the goal of first-time user experience, it's to get a second date. It's to get people to come back for the next session and to keep playing. That's the basic goal. So that's what we spend our time doing, is detailing all the ways first-time user experience need to be updated to capture folks. A couple other things that were particularly important, and these were more process steps, but this is in game development. I'm sure you guys have seen this a lot. One of the things you come to is a moment of truth about your schedule. is this schedule going to support what your goals are? And there came a point in time where, based upon what we'd seen in the 2 heuristic evaluations we did, where we recommended strongly to the development team, you need to think about the schedule and look to see whether you're going to get your game to where you want it to be by the time you want to launch. And then the third thing was also a soft launch that we recommended. A soft launch is merely, it's a lot like this external beta step. It's merely saying, hey, we're going to go out with this game, and we're not going to promote it, and we're not going to do anything to make it big yet, but we are going to go out with it and have it live, so we have an opportunity to tune the game. And just those early wins with the studio and with Aussie of convincing them to go ahead and do the soft launch, convincing them to do iteration of the Fatui, first-time user experience, were really important to us in the impact we could have. Sorry, I'm not a Mac guy, so something in there. Okay. The next thing we did was what at Zynga we call a company beta. We had a bunch of people at Zynga play the game in order to get a bunch of feedback. We've got a standardized way of doing this, and this was the big contribution that we could provide to the development of the game. Essentially what we did is we had a bunch of people play it, we had them give feedback, and then we calculated some scores that allowed us to demonstrate where the game stood at a given point in time. And I don't remember exactly, but I'm thinking we're about 6 to 8 weeks before launch when we did the company beta, something like that. The big things that came out of the company beta you can see is we had a lot of pieces in the game. So the first key recommendation, each element needs a clear purpose and align with the key goals. This happens all the time in research on games that are not yet ready. You see a bunch of different elements and you're telling people, hey, you got to bring this together. You've got to have this all centered around one thing. And that thing in this case was people want to do good. When people come to this game, they don't come to this game saying, I want to play the next hot Facebook game. They come to this game saying, I like this cause, I want to do good, so can we organize everything in the game around that? Keep everything out of the way that isn't that. So if you've got usability problems, or if you've got some mini game or something that you want to do that is not working in the whole, you need to think about tossing that aside at this point and making it all centralized around the same thing. We also got some feedback on the tone of the game. There's a lot of dialogues in the game, a lot of narrative, a lot of storytelling. And the tone of the game wasn't always, it's about empowering women overall. And there were times in the game where our feedback told us, hey, sometimes this feels like it's creating an us versus them mentality, empowering women, and anyone who's not empowering women is on the other side. And the recommendation here was really to create a constructive dialogue. And this is a great recommendation for all games, is you want to be inclusive and create a constructive dialogue. You don't want to push people away. So a lot of men who played this game early on, before it was in the final stage, said, are you trying to push men out of this game? Because it's feeling that way to us right now. And that was an important lesson for us, was give that feedback to the studio, do a full pass on all the dialogue, and create a game that is as inclusive as possible. You can see some of the quotes on what people like most and what they didn't like. That's also a good thing to pay attention to. Reading through hundreds of verbatim is really important. Here's some of the scores we collect. The important thing I want to point out to you here is this spend number. I've kind of genericize these numbers because I'm actually not allowed to talk about the more specifics of the way we do our methods, the way we collect the data. But this spend is, you can think of as a willingness to spend money in the game. And the idea of coming and doing good is one thing, but then for folks to come and have an index number that says, hey, compared to a lot of other games, people are willing to donate in this game. And you're going to see other ways that people are willing to help as well. in the next couple of slides. One of the most important pieces of feedback that we gave was to simply say what is working best in the game and what is not working well. What's working best, great things, knowing that I'm going to be helping others while I play, and then the other thing, top of not working as well, is issues in the game are oversimplified. Gabriel talked a lot about the idea that it's very difficult to address hard topics like rape or hard topics like gender inequality in developing countries. This is the number one thing, being real life issues are presented in oversimplified fashion, is saying, that might be hard to do, but people are willing to have you do it. And they don't want it dumbed down. They don't want it oversimplified for them. If you have to address it, and make it part of what we're learning in the game. Another key place, I talked earlier about how we had a lot of different pieces to the game, but we didn't have a way to bring them all together, or they didn't feel like it was all going at the same thing. One of the things we identified was part of the reason for that is there are a lot of features in the game that folks simply never got to. So if you look, green is it's discoverable and people are seeing it. Yellow is it needs work, people are seeing it but they're not understanding it. And red is it's not discoverable, people aren't even seeing it. A lot of the improvement or additional upside for this game can come from simply exposing features we already had that weren't exposed well enough for people to understand them, understand where it can get them in the game and how that can impact this cause. Impacting the cause turns out to be something that folks are really interested in doing. Overall, folks wanted to help the Half This Guy's cause. They wanted to help it by posting to Facebook. They were willing to do that, and they were willing to spend in the game. So that's a really good sign, but some things that we had to get out of the way first. People were saying that it was important to them to unlock sponsor donations, but then for it to be clear how to unlock sponsor donations, not really clear in the game. So if you have those things available, but people aren't getting to them, you might as well not have them available. So one of the big places we focused was how to make sure that people saw the things that were important to them, understood how to leverage them, and that could help achieve the goals that the players actually had, but they weren't seeing. And then the other part was, the more people believe their choices matter, it's clear where donations collected through the game will go. That's not enough. Here we're looking at roughly half of the folks are saying, a little more than half of the folks are saying, it's clear where the donations will go, that they unlock from sponsors. Obviously, we want people to feel a sense of empowerment over that, feel like what they're going to do is going to matter, and that means clarity around their actions in the game having an impact. I think we're at the time where we're going to go to a Q&A. You guys are going to come on stage. Wanted to mention one more thing while these guys are coming out. I've done a lot of research for Zynga and Zynga Games, and I'm able to do that because I've created partnerships at Zynga over time with different studios, with different leaders in studios. And it's always nervous for me when I'm working and giving feedback to a new game studio because I don't know how it's going to go. A lot of times it can be a defensive thing. Hey, it's their baby and you're telling them that their baby is ugly. And one of the best things about this working on this project was I've got folks on my team, I asked them to do extra work that's not part of their normal day. They were willing to do it, they wanted to do it, they wanted to have an impact. But we were nervous that it wouldn't have an impact because we didn't know, reaching out to our partners, how that would go. It was great working with Freema, it was great working with Asi because they were concerned with what's next, how do we make this better? Not with the evaluation of, you said you didn't like this, well, I can tell you why it's that way. That doesn't matter. It's always about what's next and what we can get done. And it was great working with both of you guys because of that focus.
Thank you, Rob. So before the next panel, we'll do a kind of 8 minutes of questions and answers about anything you heard this morning.
how are you guys taking all of the findings, all the learned lessons and statistics to the next level after everything that you've already achieved? Because that's a lot of useful data and a lot of useful information.
Yeah, so it's a great question, and we're, you know, as we're going and as we're confronted with metrics that we didn't necessarily expect. One thing we started doing is we did a series of blog posts already very early on our Games for Change blog, and from different perspectives, including Gabe wrote from the Freeman's perspective. So we did like 4 or 5 parts of much more detail than what I showed, what went well and what went wrong. And we are putting today the PDF with the initial metrics, also about demographics and the press and a wider perspective for what we showed today. So that PDF is going to be up in the web, but I would say the next stage is ready to go on MME, kind of more robust evaluation. And USAID, fortunately, is going to fund a whole new phase for After Sky that is going to go to India and Kenya, and there is a robust evaluation attached to it. So they're going to fund it over 2 years. So again, the game will have a much longer life now. And that includes also the mobile games that we didn't mention. There are 3 of them around After Sky.
Your target audience, how did it change during the last change? And was there much overlap between the company data in terms of the type of people and your target audience?
So I'll take the first half of that. The question was, what was the target audience, and how was the company data representative of that, and how did the target audience change over time? The company beta isn't designed to be representative of the target audience. It's designed to have a bunch of folks who make games all the time give their thoughts that will help iterate the game as quickly as possible. It is sometimes useful to do when the schedule allows, to do a target audience evaluation similar to, it's basically a closed beta or a soft launch. In this case, you guys did the soft launch without the user experience research feedback, but there was a soft launch. And you can talk about the more general target.
Yeah, the soft launch was something that we learned to do through our experience with Zynga. Not launch full scale, but at a small scale, just to detect all kinds of hurdles that can just appear once you launch for a population. So with the soft launch, we add metrics to monitor, to look at and tweak things. Where do the players end their first game session? How can we expand it? Are there any technical problems that makes them crash or get stuck at one place? So we used these precious 3 weeks to make the game better, to make sure that it was ready for the media talking about it, and everybody wanted to play it.
So I'm curious, when you do a project like this now, how much do you cost? Would you still do the system on split in terms of marketing? And what would you do?
So if I heard the question, if you made this project now, would you use the same budget and the 60-40 marketing versus development? And I would say for a project like this on Facebook, yes. Facebook is complex, very complex platform, and the whole service idea, the fact that you need to keep the game going after launch and iterate on feedback from players, makes it expensive. And the marketing thing, I can't stress enough. I mean, marketing distribution. The idea is that we have seen many projects in our space that never got to the hands of players in big ways. Some of them very high quality products that most of, like 90% was invested. I'm not talking only about budget, also energy in up to launch. And no real thinking about how to get it out there, how to partner with companies like Zynga, how to use the NGOs for outreach and distribution and embed it in their programs. So I would say that in that sense, definitely repeat it.
Would you still launch on Facebook too? Or would you, well, I'm just curious to know what you might do differently today.
I mean, Facebook for us was, I'll tell you what Facebook was good for us. Facebook was good for us because the audience was, the alignment was amazing. We have 80% females playing After Sky versus 20% male. And the ages, no other platform would give us 30% of the players above 35. And the majority are above 18. And it wasn't a game for kids. So in that sense, Facebook was really great for us. The microtransactions, the social elements, all that, you know, embedded in the platform. But the cons, like I said, the wall, it's a walled garden. We drove a lot of people there, only third actually accepted the permissions. But also, it's a walled garden that you need to know very well. And Facebook doesn't always make it easy for you, which maybe Rob can say something about. But it's really, it's a tough nut to crack. And I think that, like we heard Robin yesterday, you could do impactful things without necessarily go all the way to invest in such a project.
A question about the sponsors, Johnson & Johnson, and I believe it was Pearson, are supporting, as you said, up to $500 million in donating books and surgeries. What happens when we reach that maximum?
We get new sponsors.
Is that a plan?
Yeah, I mean, the idea was that we were building a platform, and when we worked, maybe you want to say something about the design, we built it so others could plug in.
Yeah, exactly. What we've not talked about, but every quest in the game is associated with a cause. So when you enter the quest, you are shown an action that doesn't cost you any money, such as signing up for a newsletter or putting out a tweet about a cause. So, and in every one of our quests, we have this space that we can use and simply replace with sponsorship if one appears. And our system with the help meters can have multiple donation in the help meter. So the system is built to make sure that we are able to allocate space, meaningful space, to every sponsor that would like to partner with us.
Let's do last question, yes.
Hey, I'm curious about how you decided how to portray the women pictorially. It kind of comes across to me, at least, as sort of relying on a very Western, unattainable beauty standard. All the women are sort of the same shape, giant eyes, skinny waist, in sort of the Disney princessy kind of way. And I'm just curious how you decided on that portrayal and how you think that could impact users, and particularly young women's self-esteem when playing these games, and if you think that matters.
Yeah, there are technical constraints. So if you want to do several body types, you need to animate them all differently because of their body type. So that's one of the constraints that we had to work with. So with one body type, and at the beginning of the project, we explored all kinds of visual direction. And one thing that was really important is to not try to be cheerful, to be colorful, and that's the direction that we've tried to implement. Make sure that there are colors, there are joy in the visual design of the character, rather than trying to show misery and stuff like that. But you say that we are kind of a model that is a bit Disney princessy, but we've also a character that has half of our face burned with acid. So we are not just making idealistic representation of women with all kinds of situation. But one thing, and I'm not an art director, so I cannot speak for my art director, but the appeal, the instant appeal of the art was important, so that it doesn't become a friction point with the public, that they do not engage the game by and say, oh, I do not find this art style appealing, I will stop playing. We wanted the art style to be appealing so that more player could engage the game.
And just to add on that, this is all part of the initial on-ramp to the game. And the art style is part of that. It's hard to measure, but if you don't have that initial on-ramp to the game, then you don't get people to play.
The last thing I would add is that we did test every piece of art and story with NGOs in countries. So I think you mentioned in the game there are 5 countries. So we had content experts in each one of them, and things were changed. I mean, character-wise, buildings-wise, they came back with sometimes harsh comments on the way we did things, and we had to change them. We'll have to let the other panel come in. Thank you so much for your attention this morning.
At Hyundai's The Tent is Back sales event of 2013 Elantra is yours